Steep and technical features on the trail will become very common once you get to the intermediate level and above. There's a few things you really need to think about when you're approaching areas like this that get more steep and have more unique and advanced features on them than you're used to approaching. Let's take a look at what we need to consider when we're dropping into lines like this. The first thing is the terrain will vastly change depending on where in the world you live. Rocks like this that are grippy and nice to ride down, even though they're very steep and technical, are very rare in a lot of places in the world. You might just have clay-based ground and it might be very loose and soft, which makes it a completely different riding experience than going down a line like this. And if you look at these two lines here, going down the middle might be considered a bit easier than up top on the rocks because it's a little more predictable, it's not quite as steep, and it's a little less intimidating coming into, and that's a big part of it. If you're not super intimidated when you drop in, you're gonna come down with more confidence, you're gonna enter and exit way smoother, and that's a huge, huge piece of riding steep technical, is feeling confident and feeling strong on the bike. Let's look at 3 different techniques you can use to practice your skills and build up experience as you're learning how to ride this sort of stuff. Number 1 is figuring out your body position and your setup coming into a line. If you're not fully set up and ready for it, it will become 1,000 times harder. So, for example, if you roll up to a line like this and you get to the very edge of it and then you decide, yeah, I can do this, don't just start from the edge, because getting your balance and getting back on the bike might be a little tricky. Always hike up the hill a bit, start higher up, take a few pedal strokes and let yourself set up and get nice and balanced and nice and ready for the line that you're about to ride into. Number 2 is speed control. Now, going down a line this steep means you're not going to be able to stop completely until you get to the bottom. So it's not like riding down a flatter trail where you can just grip the brakes and come to a stop. If you just grab the brakes really hard, you're going to fishtail over the place. And if you don't grab the brakes at all, you might be going so fast at the bottom that you have no control of where you're ending up and you're going to slam a tree or anything else that's down there. And it becomes finding that fine balance between really feathering that brake and not locking it up, and not grabbing the brake at all and going way too quick. What I recommend is the first time you come down a line like this is ride it as slow as possible without gripping your brake. Get your body nice and far back, keep your weight back, and swing those hips back, and just make sure that your weight's near the back tire of the bike, your brakes are nice and feathered but not locked up, and you're slowly creeping your way down and controlling your way through it. You'll get faster and faster over time as you get more comfortable and these lines become more predictable for you. Leading into that is the 3rd technique, and that is anticipating your exit. Now, this is a 100% mental technique. You really want to make sure that you know where you're going and where you're leaving when you're on the line. So when I get into a top section of a line like this, the first thing that I'm doing is looking at where I'm exiting, because where I look is where I'm going. And once I get into a line like this and I start rolling, stopping is very difficult. And I want to make sure if I can't stop, I at least know where I'm ending up at the very bottom. In order to anticipate your exit, you really need to plan out the whole line from the very top, pick a route and stick to it. As you can see from up here, there's 2 different options. You can take the easier option on the rider's right that is just kind of more predictable, flatter terrain that goes straight through the middle, or you can do the more dynamic, advanced intermediate feature on the left that has some rolling rock features. Once you get below the first initial rock features, the trail opens up and it gets high speed. This is where braking will be difficult and you're really going to be skidding your way down to that exit. Now, where my bike is sitting is the more advanced line. It's where the big rock face is off the start. In order to do this, you have to commit to rolling up onto the rock first of all, staying balanced, and then as you roll down, at the bottom of the first face, it's a really deep, short compression. So the second you hit that, your suspension is just going to compress and you're going to immediately start popping back up onto the next rock. You have to be ready for this and planning it. You have to anticipate that compression and that pop and be in a nice strong position. Because of this, that takes a bit of experience and balance and control to really get through it smoothly and do it really fast too. If you want to do it fast, you have to really be anticipating that quick movement. If that sounds a little scary to you and a little too intimidating, then choosing a feature like what's here on my rider's right will be a way better choice for you. It's a lot more predictable, although your aim has to be pretty on point because you're getting really close to scraping your pedals on the rocks here. It's nice and flat. It's nice and straight too. There's really no turning going on, not much body position or movement going on. You're really just staying back on the bike a bit and controlling those brakes a little bit and dipping yourself straight through to that middle section. no matter what you chose to do, whether it was the big rock up here or coming through the middle, you can see that it meets into one line. And this is pretty common. I mean, trails are only so wide and stuff often channels into one. Once you get in here, deciding where you're steering and how you're braking will become very important. Because if you look at the ground here, there's lots of loose pebbly rock, and this is really hard to brake on. And that's really common on terrain like this. So knowing how to feather that brake, really controlling that speed, and using your hips to steer you just like you're going through a corner, looking ahead and anticipating that run out and that exit that you chose at the very top. I'm standing at the most dangerous part of the line, and that's the exit, because you'll be going faster here than anywhere else. You can see there's a couple different options that you have here. If you look on this rock here, you can potentially air off it and land down there. And if you're going really fast, it's gonna be hard not to air that. Whereas on the rider's left, this line through here, if you're going pretty quick, you can manage to not catch air just by keeping your weight back and rolling straight through this. This is also a little less steep, so you're gonna have more speed control coming into it. So it's really important to even look at lines like this before you start riding down them and have a good understanding of what's there, especially if this type of riding is pretty foreign and new to you. You're not gonna be able to predict what to do on the fly as easily. And that goes to be said with everything about this, even the run out. Like, it gets flat down here and you're gonna start slowing down a lot easier. You can hit your brakes easier, but then there's trees everywhere. So you really have to gauge your line and look far ahead and know where you're going exactly the whole time. Always look far ahead on the bike and always be anticipating what's coming up next.